Welcome to today's episode of Atrium Customer Office Hours. I'm so excited to have you here. I'm Jamie Smith. I'm one of the Customer Success Associates here at Atrium. Today we'll be discussing using Atrium for account management and customer success. Just as you would with your sales teams, you can utilize Atrium to effectively manage your account management and customer success teams. In Atrium, you can monitor metrics and activities, track goals, keep your eyes on things such as renewals and opportunity health. But before I dive into the content itself, I actually wanted to take a quick moment to do a shout out to our modern sales pros. As I'm sure you can see here, somewhere in my slide or in my background, and also on the slide, Modern Sales Pros is a community that is about 25,000 people strong. It's sales leadership, sales management, sales operations professionals that you can learn from. Super, super awesome community. The venue isn't dissimilar to this, obviously high value and super educational. So we'd love to have you to join and continue just leveling up your data-driven sales management skills. If you're not a member already, you can get signed up here at the top. You can see, which is going to be modernsaleshq.com/atrium-apply. The threads, webinars, people are second to none, and it also includes some of the best sales leaders in the world. And who doesn't need to grow their network? So when you do go to sign up, select me as the point of contact. It's always cool. We get a little extra bonus for all the different people we get signed up to join. So it'd be awesome to help me out. So definitely you can type in this link here that you'll see. You can also see it in the description below. And also another thing I love to point out is if you do like all the content we've been posting, definitely share it, like it, send it with all your team members. There's a bunch of really great stuff that we have going out from the Atrium community and the Modern Sales Pros community. Cool. Another thing I'd love to just give a quick shout out on is all these amazing customers that we work with already here at Atrium as well. These are fantastic companies. I'm sure you recognize some of them. Maybe you're from one of them. So we just love to give a big shout out to all these high performing teams that are using Atrium. So we're so very thankful for them. So the next thing here that we're going to talk about is just the agenda itself. We'd love to do a little bit of level setting for us before we jump in. So we'll just get started with probably about 10 to 15 minutes of context sharing, just going over the basics and how and why you should use Atrium to manage your AM and CS teams. And then we'll actually spend a little bit of time going into Atrium itself, looking at some of the data. That is all going to be anonymized. So don't worry about us sharing anything that's private information because we would never do that. But we'd love to at least give you some examples that you could see on how you can actually utilize Atrium. So the next thing here is just adding some of the context of what we're going to be talking about. So we will actually talk about how you can help to better manage AM and CS teams, being able to use the AM and CS managerial cadences, so how you can actually bring Atrium into that during different meetings, one-on-ones, coaching sessions, so forth. Being able to actually enhance those conversations you're having with your reps and also your management with data, being able to track progress across key metrics. And then obviously we'll jump into those specific views. So I'm actually going to jump out of full screen here for us because we'll be going back and forth between the slides and actual context or actual information inside of Atrium. So yeah, excited to get started here. So the first thing here, what should we be focused on as a manager leading an AM or a CS team? So these are going to be some of the key responsibilities that are bucketed into 3 different areas that you'll be focusing on. I'm going to go a little bit out of order of what we're looking at here. And I'm actually going to start with the day-to-day piece and the renewals before looping back to ramping. So what's really important here on the day-to-day basis is obviously I know from being a customer success person, that it's really important to be able to track not only your just day-to-day activities, so how many emails you're sending and how many accounts you're engaging with, but being able to actually benchmark and monitor that stuff on a day-to-day basis really does help you understand where you're performing at, because you can understand the ebbs and flows of the reps' behaviors and be able to make any corrections early on if you need to. What's also really helpful for Atrium is to be able to track the renewals that you're going to have. So being able to understand how those behaviors, those day-to-day activities impact that long-term health of those customers. So What are our renewals going to look like in the next 90 days? The ones that are coming up right around the corner. What about the ones that are 180 days away? So being able to forecast and see how much pipeline do we have coming in? That's going to be, again, those renewals. Being able to make sure that we're forecasting that accurately, and then being able to track the net revenue retention of those to make sure that we're hitting our North Star as a company, because obviously the most important piece once that sale gets completed is that you're retaining those customers and then you're expanding those customers. So this first piece that I skipped over is going to be ramping. And what's great about ramping is that we can track the day-to-day and the renewals piece for those new ramping reps as they continue to ramp up on your team over their first 6 months and over their first 12 months. That's a really important piece right there, because you invest so much time and so much money into how your reps are going to help you perform as a company. So being able to track how they're ramping up compared to those who came before them on the team, and also those who came before who are no longer with the team. You're able to track those first days, those first weeks, those first months for those new reps, benchmark against all of those who came before them. That's a really important piece right there. So again, some of those metrics that I was just mentioning before are some of those different tools that we can utilize to understand how our reps are performing. So some of those behaviors, like I mentioned, those inputs, the things that happen on a daily or weekly basis that really drive the long-term outcomes that we want. So how many emails we're sending, that's obviously an important piece. A lot of our job is actually spent emailing with a lot of our customers. Obviously, there's other components of actually meeting with them on Zoom, in person, having calls with them, but a lot of our interaction does happen via email. So being able to track that is really important. Another really great indicator of how well an engagement can be with a customer is the email engagement rate. What's cool about that from a CS or an AM perspective is that really is going to be reflective of the content that you're sending to those customers and being able to help them be successful. At the end of the day, customer success and account management isn't necessarily supposed to just be support, but also being able to drive outcomes with those customers, making sure that they're successful, that they're getting the value out of your platform, and also getting the value out of what they're trying to accomplish at the end of the day. So being able to see how well you're engaging with them in a metric like email engagement rate, it's actually really cool to track. And then a few others that we obviously have here are how many meetings you're having on the calendar, how many accounts you're touching, how many contacts you're touching on each account, the amount of opportunities you're owning, activity points, which is a really cool one I'll talk about here in a second, and then the opportunities you're touching. In a lot of cases, the accounts touch and opportunity touch can sometimes be synonymous with each other, but again, really important to track those as they come on in a separate basis. And then this activities point card is a really, really cool one, because what we're actually doing with this metric is we're comparing all three facets of what you typically assume a rep's doing on a day-to-day basis in terms of their activities. So we're able to track how many emails they're sending, how many meetings they're actually having, and then also how many calls they might be making. So it's really cool that we can combine all three into one card and then actually track the sheer threshold of effort that those reps are putting in on a day-to-day basis, because not every day is created equally for them. Some of the other things that we're going to track here are going to be your outputs. So what actually happens after you've put in those, those activities, then those different behaviors they're going to do on a day-to-day basis. So how much revenue you're actually expecting to close. So that'd be pipeline by close date is the way that we actually call it in the platform. How many total bookings you're getting, the renewals that you're actually closing, so the wins. Same thing with the renewals you're losing. And then at the end of the day, also the quality. So the renewal rate. So actually the wins versus the losses to see how well are we actually retaining that book of business. And then the opportunity health tab can be used. And also the opportunity health card can be used in various different ways to really just monitor the performance of those touch points versus those customers to see how well and how healthy they actually are. So the next thing that we're going to talk about here is going to be, how often should you actually be using this with your AM and CS teams? So we're going to go to this next slide. So the different manager cadences here, and I'll actually zoom into this, sorry, I didn't do that sooner, is going to be looking at just the different things that you're going to do on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis with those reps. So typically you're going to have a stand-up, whether that's a weekly stand-up or a daily stand-up. So being able to look at the different Atrium digests, so those quick little hits, whether they're just notifications that you're getting from Atrium on our reps' performance, so those alerts. So you could send out like a kudos feed to them. One thing we really love to suggest is, if anything, sending out a Friday kudos feed to the reps that gives them a quick recap of how they've done throughout the week. So the anomalies actually notify us of positive performance happening with those reps to give them a quick shout out. Hey, you did an awesome job. You exceeded your goal on how many emails you sent this week. Good job. That's a really powerful thing to do for reps, because it makes them feel like they're doing a great job, even though maybe that's not a great day or a great week for them. Some of the other cadences that you're going to have here are going to be one-on-ones, different account and forecasting reviews, goal performance meetings, team meetings, and then coaching sessions. And those coaching sessions might be one-off, so they might not always be every day. So being able to use like those strategy insights that you might get, they might not come to your inbox every single day, but being able to send a quick little notification to your rep after you get a strategy insight of what might be happening with them is a great way to just have those one-off moments to pull them aside and have a great conversation about what's going on. Obviously, for some of those other ones, one-on-ones, using the rep profile pages is great for that. Using the opportunity help tab for those forecasting moments, goal alerting for those goal performance meetings, and then just using a dashboard that you might have for like the whole team. So, some of that might be more gamification or leaderboard type of, dashboards that you might be sending to the team. So being able to just have them see where are they standing, not only individually, but as they're standing across the whole org or the whole team. So the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to jump into a few views here and actually look at some different things within Atrium. So first thing here is, are my reps actually staying on top of their accounts? So different things that we can do here, and I'm actually going to jump out, is rep accountability views. This is actually something we've talked about quite a bit over here at Atrium. You might have actually been a part of one of those meetings, maybe not. But things that we find to be really, really impactful for managers is it's hard to obviously understand and harness the power to use data on a day-to-day basis to manage your teams. But what's even harder is making sure that your reps understand how that data is being used so they can make sure that they're being accountable as well. If you can make sure that you're not only just holding that information for yourself and understanding how your reps are performing, but making sure that they're visible, that information is visible to them, and making sure that they're accountable is going to be really, really important. So we talk about creating these accountability views that you can send to your reps, whether that be daily or weekly. It's a really, really important thing to send here. So I'm going to show you something that's going to be from yesterday. But again, this yesterday one that we're going to look at, this last week, and this monthly one are going to be the same exact metrics, but we're going to be pulling that information out in a couple different ways. So for this one, we're going to be looking at yesterday's performance. So this would be a great view to send to your team every morning before they start the day or right as they start the day, to just see, again, how did I perform yesterday? So we have this set up in a leaderboard form so we can see who is the highest performer and the lowest performer. Again, not to deter anyone in a negative way, but it's still really good to see where you line up as a rep, because not every day is created equal. So this really cool card that I mentioned earlier is activity points. So we can actually see the full threshold of the day's efforts. So those calls, emails, and meetings being put forth, but actually breaking it out to say, overall, how did we do on a day? So we can see here that King Louis had a really awesome day. They sent a lot of emails. They had quite a bit of time spent in meetings. Whereas we were looking at Sam Flynn, didn't have quite as many emails sent, but they spent a lot of time in meetings. So you can obviously assume here that they probably had a lot going on with their day in terms of what they had in those meetings, the type of conversations that they had, maybe the follow-up work that they had to do, but it's still good to see that they were still a really top performer, even though they maybe didn't have quite as many emails sent that day. So that's a great way to do accountability view here, is to just send a quick recap of what we're doing from that day before, so they can understand what they need to do for that next day. So the next thing that we're going to talk about here is going to be tracking reps towards their goals. So coming back into Atrium, we're going to view a goals page. It's really cool. With the goals page here is you can pull this into those different one-on-one cadences that you're going to have with your reps. And so you can see a quick snapshot of how did I actually perform this week, this month, or this quarter towards goal. Obviously, we can see here, King Louis was able to maybe be a little bit off pace in terms of where they need to be at for their weekly emails, weekly CS plays. This is actually something that looks really cool here, where they're tracking how many plays that maybe they're running in terms of like customer outreaches with customers. So there's what I see here is a way that you can configure a card called custom tasks, where we can actually track different metrics randomly into Atrium. And so for this customer that we're working with, we actually track how many CS plays they're running, so different customer touch points. And then again, some other things, how they're benchmarking towards how many contacts they're touching over the course of a month, how many customer success plays they're running over the course of a month, emails, meetings created, and so forth. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about here is how well are my CSMs actually staying on top of their book of business. So we're going to jump back into Atrium again here. But what's really cool to track here with this particular dashboard view is going to be just a quick recap of that last week's performance. So being able to say, how many emails did we send last week? What's that engagement rate that we have with those customers? How many meetings they're having on the calendar? So we can actually see King Louis got quite a few meetings last week. So they were really, really busy. And then the overall amount of how many accounts they're touching, how many untouched accounts they're having. That's something that's going to be really important as we are in the CS and account management world. Being able to make sure that we are putting forth the right steps to making sure that we're putting all touch points in all of our customers, because as we know, their success really matters on how well that they understand the platform. So making sure that whatever platform that they're obviously using, obviously for us, Atrium, we want to make sure that we're having a lot of touch points with them to make sure that all of their goals are getting accomplished. And then a few other things, obviously seeing how many contacts they've been touching over a course of a time frame. So right here we have trailing 3 months. So are we multi-threading into those accounts? Multi-threading never stops. After the SDRs or the AEs are actually working on those accounts, it's really important for us on the CS side or the account management side to continue to multi-thread into those accounts to make sure that we are staying on top of how well they're doing. Are there any new users over there that we should be focusing on? Is there anything else that we should be doing on this customer success side of the world that we can help build value with our product? And then obviously seeing what are the apps that we have closing for this month or this quarter, and then also looking at by how many days they've been untouched. So here we can see, hey, you know what? We can look at this card by the amount of days untouched, and we could say, hey, King Louis got quite a few opportunities coming up here that are about to be closing this quarter, doing a decent job of touching all the ones within the last 7 days. We've got some over here that haven't been touched in at least a half a month to a full month. And then obviously we could see that for Mary Darling. They have something that's supposed to be closing here this quarter and they haven't even touched it in 2 months. This is definitely a red flag. And this is something that they need to get corrected. So the next thing that we can talk about here is going to be some of the ways that the team members have bandwidth. So this is going to be something more or less for an implementation team, right? Being able to understand what's their bandwidth, what are they doing on a day-to-day basis to make sure that if they need to take on a new account and onboard them, or whether your CS team does onboarding as well as managing the account, we'll be able to understand what's their bandwidth look like. So when a sale gets completed by the sales team, that they're going to pass off that account to that CS person or that onboarding or implementation team. We want to understand what does the bandwidth look like for them. And so we've got a dashboard here that's going to be able to understand a few different key metrics that will help us get a better idea. So for this particular team, what we're looking at here is how many meetings do they have on the calendar? And what does that look like week over week? Because as we know, when you're onboarding a new customer, it's going to take a lot of time up front to make sure that you're understanding what are their initial priorities, why did they buy your platform, want to use your product, how to make sure that they're going to be successful with it. So having all the correct touch points in between. So how many meetings are they going to have week over week? Does my onboarding team, my CS person have enough bandwidth to have all the necessary meetings with them. So looking at it week by week, looking at it just as a whole month over the last trailing 30 days, and then looking at it as also how many kickoffs do we have? So how many initial first meetings do we have? How many did we have last week? Duke Westleton had 7 last week, quite a few. So we'd probably assume that we probably don't want to give them anything for the next 4 to 6 weeks that's super, super in depth or super time consuming, because they've got a lot of it being spent here with just 7 of them that kicked off last week. And they've also got 6 more that have kicked off this week. So right now they're probably looking at 13 new customers that they're handling. We probably should start to filter them away from getting more customers and start to hand more to Glittering Goldie or Penguin Waiters or Secretary Bird, who doesn't have any. And then something else that's really helpful here is tracking how many new contacts they're touching. So obviously, as they're onboarding new accounts, how many new people are they talking to? So that could be individual users. Again, if you're onboarding an account, it could be 1 user, it could be 10 users, it could be 100 users. So being able to understand how many people we're talking to is going to be another great way to understand that threshold. And then a few other metrics here of just total meetings that they've had on their calendar over the last couple of months, how many accounts that they've been touching over a certain time frame. And again, just breaking these out from a weekly basis to how have they been doing over the last 30 months or 30 days, the last 3 months, the last 6 months, to understand what's that actual month by month look like for them. Are they super high at effort? Are they super high at the top of the charts in terms of how many accounts that they're handling? Are there other reps that we probably could start feeding more? Are we overfeeding one rep? So just some other great ways to keep an eye on what we're doing here. The next thing that we're going to talk about is also how closely that we're going to track our renewal goals, and are there going to be any surprises that come up? So here we have an effectiveness dashboard. So what we're going to be looking at with this effectiveness dashboard is using the opportunity health card, and then understanding, again, how many renewals we have coming up this quarter or in the next 90 days. Are these opportunities that we're working on, again, by health? So an Atrium opportunity health is scored off a couple different factors. It's scored off of what was our last engagements with that customer? Are we continuing to engage with them well? Have we had any meetings recently? Do we not have any meetings? For a success motion or an account management motion, we might not necessarily be focused so much on obviously a sales cycle time, but focusing on overall touch points is going to be really important for us. And then another important thing here is to track what's been our win rate, or obviously our renewal rate over a certain time frame. And then looking at a few other things here, like weighted pipeline by closing by close date by historical win rates. So obviously, if we have had some reps who have struggled to have good renewal rates, what this card's going to do is it's actually going to be able to take our expected win rate, so our pipeline that we're going to have on those open opportunities, and we're going to be able to multiply that by what's our overall win rate or our renewal rate, and give us a projection on where we think we're going to actually close that month at. So it's a really cool card to do a little bit more forecasting and get a better understanding of where our books of business land. And then just taking a quick look at our overall wins and our overall losses. Cool. And so the next thing that we're going to look at here is overall business trends. So how are we doing as an overall business on expansions, new business, renewals? So this is going to be something that's going to be more of a second level view, or something that you want to report up to a second level manager. So if you're a frontline manager, you want to show how's your team doing, or how is the entire organization doing from a whole renewals and expansion world. Maybe you have a board meeting that you want to present this information in. So this is a great way to reflect that information upwards to other teams. So for us, being able to look at things like bookings by opportunity type. So we can look to see here, how much bookings did we have over the last year, over the last 2 years? And how does that break down in terms of expansions that we're having, or license requests that we're having in here? So being able to see that, and then also renewal rate. So obviously this team has done a really great job over the last 2 years of continuing to build incrementally on how many expansions that they're having. What's the expansion license request here? So being able to get net new licenses, and then obviously how much we're renewing month over month. And then looking at a few other metrics here. So expansions and win backs here for this company. Renewals and just expansion bookings actually trailed out of net new business. This is just looking specifically at that information of just expansions and renewals. And then looking at it from a whole rep basis too, and then trailing out over a few other key points here, like win rates. So being able to understand what do our win rates look like as a whole organization, but then breaking that down by customer tier. So being able to say, what do I look like for maybe this tier being a large tier or a small tier, depending on how you rate them. So for this company, they're doing not a great job right now and over the last couple of months with actually renewing their T1 accounts. So this is definitely an area of emphasis and something to focus on. And then a few other key points here that's going to be really great is being able to see how much open renewal pipeline we have in the coming months. So right now we've seen everything we've had in the trailing 24 months, but you can also look at this for the next forward time frame as well. So we will look at that here in a second. And then a few other things that we're going to look at is the overall just average selling price, and then just the overall meeting counts that we're having as a team. And again, just the renewal bookings that we've had in the last 30 days. All right, so that's actually everything I have planned here for today, going through these. I thank you very much. If you have any questions, definitely reach out to your customer success manager. They'll be happy to walk through and build out some of the stuff with you to help you be successful with using Atrium in customer success and account management. The last thing I wanted to talk about here is going to be our future office hours that we have coming up next. So if you are curious, we have on July 7th, our rep kudos and gamification. So keep your eyes out peeled for that one. And then on the 28th, we're going to have our second level of management and managing multiple teams with Atrium. If you see in the chat, you'll see that there's a link to get signed up for that. If you don't see that here, or if you're watching this afterwards, let your CS rep know, and they will help you get signed up. Thank you so much for coming today, and I can't wait to see you next time.